Everybody, and welcome back to the Golf Chat Show Live. So yes, I am on my own today again, but for a good reason. We're talking about drivers. We're making sure drivers are set up for your game, and how do you maximize your potential with the driver that you've currently got. Also, if you've got any questions about how we should go about buying a new driver, any of these aspects, please just fire them in the comments down below. But before we get into today's content, I just put something out on Instagram before, and I want to go through what we're kind of seeing is everybody's driver, because there's definitely some ones that I wasn't quite expecting to be in there, but are being thrown up. So if you want to head over to my Instagram, I did like a little question on there, my latest post. It was, what driver are you currently using? And we got loads of comments on there. So we got Fletch, he said he's still using an F9. We've got Craig, who's using G410 Plus. We've got Brendan, who's using an M3. We've got Kurt, who's using a PXG, which is one of the ones not that I don't expect people to use, but they are an expensive driver, aren't they? We know drivers are quite expensive now, but they are expensive drivers. Chris Kirk, unless you want to give me and donate my SC, I'm still using F9. Apologies, Chris. I'm still in the bag with the Cobra. I'm still really loving it and really enjoying it, especially this year's, which is actually the post. Scott, Ping G410. Brian, he's using the M2. Az is using the TaylorMade Sim, another one, and TaylorMade M6. So there's a real mix of drivers and what people are using this year, and I think that's pretty interesting. So if you are just joining the show, welcome to the show. This is where we've been going live every single evening from lockdown. Warm welcome if you're from the UK, warm welcome if you're from abroad. If you do enjoy this content at any time, guys, please do consider hitting that subscribe button. It would mean the world to me. As well as hitting that thumbs up button, it would be great to have you as part of the show. So let's go into a little bit about what I'm using in my driver currently and what I'm using in my game. So I'm currently gaming the Speed Zone, SZ for short. Now, with this, it was quite frustrating, really. I got it just before lockdown, not just before, probably about 2 or 3 weeks before, but being busy coaching and all the rest of it, and with work, didn't quite get the time that I would like to give this bad boy a go. Now, the differences between this year and last year's driver, we'll go through them, because that's an important thing. We've got that one here. And as well as that, we're going to tell you how you can set up your driver. Now, most modern drivers are adjustable. So having adjustable drivers, it makes it easier to optimize them to you without having to go and change the shaft, take it to a custom fitter and all that expensive kind of side of the thing. So once you get a driver now, you can pretty much customize it within reason, as long as it's pretty good set up to you in terms of shaft. Close. So Kev Ray put, I got the Ping G30, but I've just bought the Cobra SC. Need to go and hit it now. You have the same thing as me. I've just got it before lockdown. Love it. Hit it. And I was like, this feels so much more forgiving than last year's, but still a very good driver. Just improve the technology. I just want to hit it. Now, I tried hitting it in the garden the other day, and if you've seen my garden lockdown video, you'll know exactly what I mean. It's not the best net. The dog's now chewed a hole in it. So if you get it in the middle bit, which don't hit it very often. No, I'm joking. I sometimes do hit it there. The ball could potentially go through, especially with driver. And it's at that height for driver, which is vulnerable would be the words I would use. So let's get into today's Golf Chat Show. And if you, obviously, guys, if you have any questions about your game, what you're using, how I set it up, please do comment them down below. I'll see them and I'll answer as many of the questions as I can. So before we get into that, let's have a look at last year's driver and this year's driver. Here you go. So you'll notice they look pretty similar from the side profile. The other things that you'll see is you can see that we've got an infinity face on the SC, the bottom one, and the milled face is just around, not the center, but it's not as big as this one. So straight away, visually, this one looks a lot bigger to me, especially down behind the golf ball. And it almost gives you that placebo of it being more forgiving, even though it is more forgiving, and you do get a bit more bang for your buck across the whole of the face. So Black Seeker said, Alex, how do you know if your driver's long enough? Now, this is a massive thing, isn't it? We all go out there to have the longest driver and beat your friends, and that is the fun of golf. We want to beat our friends, and we want to be the most competitive golfer we are. But what I would say for you is, how do you know the driver's long enough for your game? It's difficult. I would basically base it on your golf course. Is what I would base it on. If you feel you can hit majority of your par fours, maybe with the exceptions of your stroke index 1 and stroke index 2s if they're long ones, in 2, then I would say you've got a driver that's long enough for your game. Now, it's not just a driver, is it? It could be technique, smash factor, all these things we need to look into to make sure your technique is good enough for your game. Now, obviously, we can optimize the driver to the absolute max. And I know Kev Ray put a comment down there below. And what difference does it make moving the weights? Now, we will go into this because I've moved the weights around. My heavier one is towards the front, whereas usually when it comes, the heavier one is at the back. So going into how I currently have my setup, my driver. So I've got the hazardous smoke, 6.5, low spinning shaft in here, Project X. Now, this is a shaft that I've used for the last 3 or 4 years now, and it's something that I've really got on with well. I've just literally put a new version of the hazardous smoke in the driver that I'm currently gaming. Now, I've also got a 10.5 head set to standard. Now, a lot of people might think that sounds like quite a lot of loft. Now, all the pros use a lower lofted golf club. Now, there's things you need to think about, and in order to optimize your conditions, there's something called a spin loft, okay? And we will go into that throughout. We'll just go into another question here. Matthew Bennett said, was looking at getting the Sim Max driver, and it seems really forgiving. But now looking at the standard Sim, as the weight is adjustable. My standard shot is a slight fade. Which would you recommend? I would always recommend, if your shot is slight fade, getting a driver with a little bit more loft. That will help negate the slice a little bit. Now, it might sound a bit of a contradictory terms, but when you've got a driver with little loft, when you've got your golf ball, imagine we've got a golf ball here, it is easier to tilt the spin axis and hit it off to the right. So if you're a 1-iron, compare that to your 9-iron, it's easier to slice on 1-iron than it is a 9-iron. So I would always say having a driver which is adjustable, I think is a little bit better, because if your game improves and you want to lower the loft of the driver, because we adjust the spin loft, which we'll talk about, that is what I would go down. Now, I think that may be a little bit more expensive, the adjustable driver. So for me, Matthew, I would go for the adjustable one. That would be my advice to you, because if your game does improve and you feel like you get away from that slight fade or slice, whatever it might be, then you can not only just got a driver which you feel you have to change, but you can adjust it to your game. Richard Bainley said, Alex, does he mean shaft length? Possibly shaft length. No, with the modern drivers, that shaft length is getting longer and longer, because the longer the shaft, the easier it is to create a bit more club head speed, because they can make them longer and lighter, helps you create more club head speed. Now, the caveat with this is it's hard to square up the face because it's a little bit longer. It makes it a little bit more independent. So it's funny, because you look at most club golfers, they will use a driver which is a lot longer than what is standard on tour. There's never really a standard. 43.5, 44 is roughly around what most pros use. And I know mine is a little bit shorter than what standard stock is off the shelf, but it depends what your goals are. If it's to hit it longer, then obviously a longer golf club will help you hit it longer, but you then forgive a little bit of forgiveness. But it's all those things, and you need to weigh it up. What suits your golf game? What suits your golf course? So going back to what I've got here, and let's explore a little bit of a spin loft here. So we've got our driver. And we've got our angle of attack, which we'll say is a little bit on the down. Now, if we're hitting down the golf ball, so angle of attack relative to the ground is a little bit down the golf ball, but we're presenting a lot of loft, that's going to make this vector between our angle of attack and our loft quite big. So if you're someone who's spinning the golf ball with the driver quite a lot, I'm guilty of this, because I hit down the golf ball and add a bit of loft. This is not going to make you very efficient. So when the top tour pros and all the golf instruction is talking about being able to hit up on the golf ball with more loft, this is shortening the spin loft. So we make the spin loft a little bit smaller, and we get them pointing a little bit more in the same direction. So we have about 10 degrees of loft, say, I'm hitting up on it 1 degree. This will limit the amount of spin that we create. This helps create that moon ball effect, bit like Rory, hits it higher with less spin, makes the fact that you can hit the ball longer. So anytime that you've got a driver which has a little loft, this majority of the time will come down to your angle of attack. If you're someone who launches it well with a good spin number and hits up on it, you can negate that and have less loft on the face. So why would people, and most people, have a 10.5-degree driver? Well, for one, it's a little bit more forgiving. More loft helps you hit a little bit of a straighter shot within reason. And a lot of actual club golfers need the loft to get the ball in the air. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, no, driver, you got more club speed hit in the air. Well, there's an optimum. A lot of people don't launch the driver as high as they should because they hit down on it and they add loft. So they don't have enough club head speed to get the ball in the air. So having a bit more loft in this case will help you launch it a little bit higher and then help you carry the ball further. So Blackstick, hopefully I've answered that question there for you in terms of length of driver. Longer, they're just basically that the fact that most clubs this now are longer. That's again how manufacturers are getting the ball to travel a little bit further. For a young guy, Rachel, thanks so much for the kind words, everybody. I really appreciate it. So back to spin loft. So top guys on tour are trying to reduce that spin loft and get it to their optimum where they're hitting up on the golf ball with a similar amount of loft, so like 9-10 degrees, and that's really going to help them make maximum distance. Now, for me, I'm a player that hits down on the golf ball slightly, and I really struggle with it. So I've got a low spinning shaft to kind of negate those factors. So there is things you can do in setup. But let's go into the fact that imagine you bought your driver now and it's not quite going well. You're slicing it quite a lot. So what people find is when you've got a driver, and some like Callaway have come up with a method that if you adjust the face, you don't quite change the roll, because it used to be if you adjust the neck on a driver and you add loft, the face will start to look like it tilts a little bit towards the left. And if you take loft off, this will slightly open the face. Now, in my opinion, if I changed the true loft of what the driver was when I bought it, it does look a little bit different. So when I'm saying to you guys that want to hit it a little bit further and potentially a little bit straighter, now without seeing true numbers, it's hard to say. But I kind of go with the rule of thumb for most club golfers that if we had a little bit more loft potentially, this is going to help us launch it a little bit better, get the ball in the air for a bit longer, and that's going to really help us hit the driver longer. So I would definitely recommend going out there, trying different drivers and trying different lofts if you've got an adjustable driver. So this goes up from 10.5 all up to 12 degrees and all the way down to 9 degrees. So 1.5 degrees each way. So that's a really good amount of adjustability within a driver, because this allowed me to mess around with it and get the golf club ball in the air longer, hit it straighter, and overall, that's what we're looking to do. So Kev Ray asked the question earlier on, all about the weights. So you'll notice here, when you get a Cobra C driver, a standard, the 14 gram weight and the 2 gram weight come in. So the 14 gram is the red and the 2 gram is the black. Now, they come as standard with the 14 gram at the back. So I've swapped my 14 gram to the front, meaning I've moved more of my center of gravity a little bit closer to behind the head. Now, with doing this, I will lose a bit of forgiveness, because by putting the weight lower and further back, this creates a little bit more gear effect. This creates a more forgiving driver. Now, if you go back over the years, the ping driver has been one of the most spinning drivers. I'm just talking general terms, but has been one of the most forgiving. This is because they got a really low and back center of gravity. So what I've done is, because I'm a high spin player, I've gone, right, well, I want to reduce my spin, so I'm moving my heavier weight right behind the head. Now, there is massive, massive benefits of this, because if I get it out the middle, right behind the center of gravity, boom, going to help me hit it a little bit longer. But off-center hits may not be as forgiving. Now, general terms, this driver is a very forgiving driver. I'm just talking it relevance to where I've moved the weight. So if you're looking for more forgiveness, move the weight back, or have the heavier weight at the back. And I'm saying this loosely. I think you can potentially online get a even heavier weight than this, but whether you'd want to do that, because it makes the swing weight a little bit heavier, it makes the club feel a little bit heavier and play a lot heavier. So it's going to reduce your chance of swinging it at a fast speed. Other things that I would recommend you looking at is, like we said before, doing a loft, but also experiment with shaft length. I know that's not easy to do, but if you could potentially go on eBay and try different shaft lengths, that would be something that would be, I would definitely advise you to do. Now, I also want to go into like lofts and weights again, because I'm a drag guy that used to have a tailor-made, I can't remember it now. What's it called? Sim. Not Sim. Tailor-made slider. Got it that long ago. Had tailor-made slider. Now, those drivers, when they first came out, they were like, wow, these things go long. Now, on that, the caveat was they weren't very forgiving. You got it off center, it went nowhere, and it was all over the gaff. So that was because they had the center of gravity quite close to the face. Again, making sure that you can pop it and hit it a little bit further. And yeah, Richard, yeah, I feel like with my ping, I feel I'm losing distance. Now, again, this is the thing. Ping are known as one of the most forgiving drivers, but with that, the reasons are because they got a lower center of gravity, CC, and the way they set it up. Now, there's nothing to say that that's not going to be a long driver. And I think they've improved that over recent years to become a little bit longer, but they're known as forgiveness. That's just what Ping are known for. Whether they change that, I don't think they probably will, because that's the way in which they've set their market stall up. But for me, the reasons why going back before I was looked after by Cobra and Puma, I didn't change my driver for like 4 years. And I just got a driver that really worked for me. And if you've got something that really works for you, just comment down below what that club is in your bag. Because I think as any player, good player, just new to the game, if you get something that works, stick with it, would be my advice, because it really helps you become a club that you can trust under pressure. Anything that you can trust under pressure, whether it be Saturday medal, playing for the Open Championship, whatever it is, that's something we want. Now, there will become a point over a period of time where then that you are potentially losing out on distance because of new technology and all these things. Now, for me to change 2 drivers in 2 years is a massive thing. I've still got this headache, and I was testing them against each other, and this is actually edging it, because going back to last year's driver when I was using that was probably one of the best seasons that I had with a driver. Now, if anybody you know my game, for my size, I hit it quite a long way. That sounds a bit big-headed, but I'm just being truthful with you. But with that, I can throw some wild ones in there. So for me to have something that I trust and that I can understand what happens under pressure, it is absolutely paramount for me to play my best golf. So overall, this has helped me become a little bit straighter, a little bit more forgiving. And obviously, there's always that time where it's a honeymoon period with a driver because something new, something exciting. But honestly, I've had it on my flight scope. I've tested it. Unfortunately, not being able to course as much as I'd like. I have used it on the course and played some good golf, hit some long shots, and there will be vlogs of that out after lockdown. So it is something that I can't wait to get a little bit more into and really explore how to optimize that for my own golf game, because that's what I think part of the fun is. When you get new equipment, it's not the buzz of, right, okay, it's new, it's set up. Well, it might be set up for you if you're fortunate enough to go to a top-end fitting centre and they'll set it up straight away. But in my opinion, you've got to see what that plays like under pressure and out on the golf course to get a driver set up for your golf game. I think far too often we go for a fitting and it's in a certain environment. We may be nervous. We may not be nervous. But might swing it differently when we've got somebody watching us. Because at the end of the day, we all don't play in front of the top pros or in front of crowds like the top pros, I should say. So when we've got somebody in front of us, we are going to swing it a little bit different, a little bit tempo. We feel like we've got something to prove. So until you get that driver out on the golf course, it's hard to know how it reacts to your golf game. And that's where I think the real thing about changing the head, having to go with the lofts, adjusting the weights around, try it for a few holes, change it around, go out on the golf course on your own. And as long as nobody's watching, guys, I won't be saying this if people are watching, put out different tee shots and different holes. So hit 3 tee shots with the weights back, 4 tee shots with the weights forward, and really see what happens to the ball flight, what happens to the driver, and if you really enjoy what's happening with it. Because that's the end of the day. Tinker, enjoy it, and find how you can optimize it out on the golf course. So we've got some more questions coming in here, guys, which is absolutely fantastic. All Day Ray says, Alex, I have the F9, hazardous smoke, black, 6.0, but hard, been all over the place with it. Switched back to my 913 D3 with ideally a white MSI, and I didn't miss a fairway. Now, Ray, is that because you trust it? Ray, just please comment down there below. What loft have you got it set up to? I would definitely recommend trying and lofting it up. That will potentially help you a little bit if you're missing it off to the right or missing it both ways. is that hazardous smoke the same weight as your MSI 130 70S? Because that's something you need to look into. Have you got the weights on the back or set forwards? It's hard to say what is actually coming perfect. What shaft to go in the F9 to get the same results with the dealer 70S? Well, I got the 6.5 here, and this is 60 grams. So 70 grams for a driver sounds like quite a heavy driver shaft. So it's, do you know what I'd absolutely recommend? Now, this is not easy to do, but you can make that driver shaft that you have in your ideally a 70S. You can put a sleeve that will put the Cobra in there. Now, that'd be the one thing I would try. It's not easy. You can do it. You have to hot melt it off and put it back on, but it is doable at some places. Most places will be able to do it for you. You get a Cobra sleeve, and you could try that. But if you are struggling with the driver, I think you've got to take both out, test them. I wouldn't say put the heavier weight on the front of the F9 because that's going to make the driver a little bit less forgiving. I would definitely say it's all about taking the boat out of the golf course, have a play around with the loft on the F9 until you get something that looks good down the ground, and have a play with where the weights are front and back. Do test that. But I would say if you can get the same shaft or something that plays the same, because what you're going to think of, that shaft in one club will play very different to what it does in another club. So it's difficult for me to say without seeing your game, but I'll definitely give those factors a go, and I hope that helps you there, Ray. Kev Ray, what weight is the shaft and what difference does make? Mine's 70 grams. So the weight of the shaft will make the club have a slightly different swing weight for one, but also play a little bit differently. Now, heavier will be harder to create more club head speed. Now, a lighter shaft will be easier to create more club head speed. Now, the thing that I like in a heavier shaft, especially my irons, that I have the feeling of where the club is in the golf swing. I hate something that feels like a feather because I don't get the feedback of where it is. Now, that's my personal preference on that front, and it is all about personal preference. We have to make our golf game and our golf clubs suit our very own golf game. So that would be what I would say. It's one, it makes it play a lot different in terms of actually being able the club head speed you can create, but also then from that, it's all about the ability to make a good feeling in the swing, and something heavier for me really helps me hit the ball longer. Now, I know we're talking about drivers here, guys, and we had, I put a poll on Instagram earlier, and it was all about what drivers everybody was using, and I find it really interesting. And this is one thing I want to put to you all. Do you think, now think of this, I know some of you guys may be watching from the UK, not from the UK, I should say, from maybe Australia, America, or wherever you might be watching from. But what do you think could happen next year? Now, we potentially have a lost year this year here in the UK of playing golf. Now, manufacturers bring out drivers every single year. So do they not bring one out next year because we've not really had a chance to use this year's? What do you think they do? What do you think they should do, as a matter of fact? Comment that down below. It'd be great to hear your opinion on this, because I think a lot of people sometimes get sick of new drivers coming out every single year. And this may be a big change. It may not be a big change. I think they might not actually bring something out, but then all the guys at the big top will have this planned, and the driver plans released years in advance. So Herman said, "Sir, should I switch to a 45-inch driver to gain some yardage? I am 64, 5'5" tall. I'm very competitive. I use senior flex shafts. Thoughts? 10.5. I would potentially, actually, if we can, loft the driver up a little bit more. I think that would definitely help. Longer shaft will definitely help create more club head speed. Now, the thing you've got to think about that is a longer shaft is going to be harder to hit it out the middle. So do you go and negate, you might not hit out the middle, which might sacrifice yardage overall, but definitely, I'd say 99% sure, if you lofted up a little bit and you made it a longer shaft, depending on your angle of attack, I'm just using general terms here, and you got it out the middle, that one out the middle will go longer than one that was out the middle with a shorter length shaft, I would definitely say. But what I would say is you've got to think, is that really going to benefit my overall golf game? Length off the tee is not everything, is it? It's about being consistent. Plenty of good players on the European Tour and compete on the world circuit. I know the modern game now is getting into being the fact that you've got to hit it a long way no matter what tour you're playing on. But you think Soren Kelsen, Luke Donald, former world #1, Ryder Cup star, wasn't known as a long player. Now, obviously, he is long to all us, but we're putting him on his stage, relative to his stage. He is not the longest player out there. So I would say we just need to put it all in perspective. We need to make sure we're long enough for our golf course, and that's going to allow you to make a golf game which is competitive, and that's what we want. Oliver pays 120 grand project tax shafts. Thanks, makes sense. Well, hopefully that helps. I'd love for you to come back to me next time we go live, which will be tomorrow, and let me know if you managed to, or when you managed to get back out on the golf course, let me know how that goes. Black Seeker said, the latest and greatest new drivers is not all the big deal for regular golfers. Last year's model will be fine. I have to say, I agree with that comment. It is a true comment. I do believe in that comment. Obviously, one thing I would say is that you may be missing out on a little bit of technology, but does that difference between the price worthy that? And only you as a golfer can answer that. People might think it is worth that extra £100-200 to a latest driver compared to a non-latest driver, but only you know that. Matthew Bennett, they should delay a new release of driver. I'm sure working on clubs they release 3 or 4 years in advance. Many golfers haven't bought a new clubs yet. I agree. I personally think this is what I'm thinking. If one brand, say for example, obviously Cobra and Puma, I'm supported by them, didn't bring out a driver next year, yeah, and obviously that would probably hurt sales. So I don't know if that's going to happen. That's no teaser, that's no spoiler. But everybody else did. I personally believe, whether this is right or wrong, they would get actually a lot more respect from the golfing community for not doing that. So when they brought out maybe one next year, but maybe at the end of next year, so kind of like November, September time next year, not the early release, which come on April, I personally believe that would be a lot of respect from the golfing community. And a lot of people would probably be like, yeah, and that's a great move. Now, the guys at the top of Cobra Puma may have something different to say about that, but that's just my opinion, guys. So let me know down below what you think of that. I think that's an interesting point. I know Matthew Bennett said what he thinks about that and his opinion on that. And I think it's important that we all kind of share our opinion on here. We're here to talk about golfing stuff and really vent all our golfing questions towards. So, guys, thanks so much so far for all the questions. We're talking about how we can maximize your driver for your golf game. We talked about shaft length, moving the weights around, how this gets forgiveness, should drivers be brought out next year. It's really, really big things. Now, in the UK, if you're watching the UK, we've heard that Boris Johnson potentially might be announcing something tomorrow, which might open golf courses, it might not. I really hope they do. Now, obviously, there are more important things about people's health, people's safety than opening golf courses. Let's make that definitely absolutely clear to begin with. But I think it would be great from a golfing point of view if we did get back out on the golf course. I'm truly, truly missing it now. I've hit so many balls during lockdown, more than I can actually even imagine. I feel like I've got blooming wrist strain. But overall, I can't wait to go out there. Actually, I've not done my hours exercise today. And after we finish live here, I am going to go and walk around the golf course. It does have a public footpath through it. So I will be feeling like I want to be out on the golf course, hitting some golf shots, definitely. But guys, thanks so much for joining me today. We are back tomorrow with Andrew Murray. Now, I'm not going to confirm the time because, like I said, I know there's a big announcement coming out in the UK very soon, and hopefully that we will be able to go back on golf, but we've got to make sure we do stay safe. So once we know what time Boris Johnson's going to be on TV tomorrow night with that big announcement, we will fit around that. So please do keep up to date with all my social media channels. And I'm going to answer one more question actually before we go, because Arnie just came up with a question. I use TaylorMade slider with an extra stiff shaft for Jacora. Set up to draw. Loft increases from 9.5 to 10.5. It's been all over the place. As a high handicap at 26, should I bag swap it? Now, one thing on it, I've got to understand is, what is your clubhead speed? Because the TaylorMade slider, like I said earlier, is a seriously hard driver to hit. And the reason is because, I'll use this one actually, it's easier. The center of gravity is right behind the face. Now, this makes it super long for its time, but it's hard to actually become very forgiving with it. So I would say you've got to have a look at the shaft potentially, because I'm just generalizing here. If the 26.6 handicap, potentially that extra stiff shaft is not the right for you. Now you may have a fast club at speed, so it might be right. But I would say if the shaft is too stiff, now there's nothing wrong with that being too stiff. You could have a driver game set up for you because you could be sacrificing yards if it is. But if you've got something that's too stiff, it's going to be hard to square the face. Vice versa, if something's too whippy, it's going to be hard to square the face. So it's finding that optimal point. So I would definitely test different shafts in that head to start with, save yourself some money. But also I would say potentially going for something like the F9 or the SC is a little bit more forgiving options. There are other options out there, guys, like we've been speaking about. Arnie, right, okay, fair enough. 116 miles an hour average is fast enough for extra stiff, so absolutely fine. What I would say is I would be having a look, if you can, get on a launch monitor, see what your club head average is between in terms of face to path. That would be my definite advice to you, because once you can know what your face to path relationship is and what your average from your mean is, then you can understand why it's gone all over the place. It could also be spin numbers. So for me, it'd be hard to say. I wouldn't swap it straight away. If you've got a club head speed which is fast enough for that shaft, don't swap straight away. Find something maybe in technique before you go and explore down new drivers, because that's going to hopefully save you a little bit of money. Perfect, Matthew. Thank you for announcing it's at 7 p.m. What means we're going to go live at 8 p.m. tomorrow night, because we may have some news about the Golf Chat Show and about what potentially we all might be able to do in the coming weeks. Guys, thank you so much for all the questions today. Hopefully I've answered all of them, and hopefully you know a little bit more about how to optimize your driver to your golf game. Thanks so much. See you soon.